Swarthmore Borough Council's work session of October 7th, 2020 is called into session. By way of roll call, I see that all members of council are present and accounted for, as is our Mayor Marty Spiegel, Borough Manager James Billings, and Borough Solicitor Bob Scott. The first item of business on tonight's agenda is a public hearing concerning Ordinance 1087, which adopts standards for hardscape in the Borough Zoning Code. I hereby call that public hearing into session. Again, this concerns ordinance number 1087, which would amend the zoning code of Swarthmore Borough by eliminating minimum pervious coverage requirements and adding maximum hardscape requirements. Anyone present here this evening that would care to address council at this hearing on ordinance 1087? There being none, are there any members of council that would like to make a comment during this hearing period? If not, I'm calling the public hearing on ordinance 1087 to a close. And we'll move on to the more general public comment period. Anyone who would care to address council this evening on any issue, except for ordinance 1087, step forward to the podium and please state your name and address.
Bill Foster, I live at 412 Strathaven Avenue in Swarthmore. So I wanted to talk about the trash and recycling contract, the bids that you'll be going over tonight. So your borough manager kindly, after the bid opening, circulated the bid tallies. And if you don't have them in front of you, I mean, there's a lot of elements to those, but one thing that stands out is the low bidder for recycling. It was B&L. And then they were the only bidder to break out the difference between collecting and disposing of the recycling, as if they own it, versus collection only and having the borough retain ownership. And if you look at the difference in those valuations that are in the bid, it's about $86,000 difference. And historically, the borough has roughly about 500 tons of recycling, I think a little less. But if you go with 500 tons, that difference of $86,000 means that the bidder is valuing the value of the recycling at negative $172 a ton. That's not a very good price. So for instance, in Philadelphia's recycling contract that is with Waste Management, if they deliver the recycling to a transfer station, they have to pay $126 a ton. And if they deliver it to the sorting facility, it's $104 a ton. So basically, the bidder is saying, at that price point, we don't want to deal with it. We'll deal with it for $172 a ton, which is a pretty high fee. So given that, and the perception among recycling experts that even the $126 a ton that Philly was paying isn't a good price. So 172 is clearly worse than 126. So I think the borough can do better by going out to bid for a recycling sorting contract and taking up B&L on the option of collecting and transporting only. So that's what I'd like to say. Is another bit of sad context in this. I would like to point out that the cost to dispose of trash, if under the county, is $58 a ton. So looking at $172 a ton for recycling versus last year this trash at $58, it shows you we have a lot of work to do. And I think that work can be done if your recycling is clean, if our consumers are buying the right kinds of containers, that have value in the recycling market. But though that disparity really highlights, from an economic point of view, some of the challenges in the recycling market. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If anyone else is talking, I just wanted to add a comment. Thank you, Bill. It's great. Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing. I came up with about the same numbers. Our curbside recycling is about $450, so actually I think it's closer to $180 to $185 a ton. So what I had said earlier, circulated in a memo, we can wait and discuss this if you want, in committee, sort of floating between two committees. It's an environmental issue, it's traditionally been in public works. But we do have the advantage of having a couple of other municipalities in Delaware County who have gone out to bid for processing. One of them is Lansdowne. Actually, our solicitor, I believe, is solicitor for both of them. Are you friend them? Yeah. So Bob's actually vetted them. There are some questions about is it low bid or is it professional fee? Can you negotiate the contract? Nether is taking bids tomorrow. Theirs is a much simpler contract than Lansdowne. Lansdowne used a consultant. So what I had proposed, and I think the three people who were sitting in on that meeting are actually here, is to sort of reinvent that meeting that we had before, talking about recycling. We could set up a time. I cannot see any downside in getting the numbers for the processing. We'll see how they come in, paralleling this, and then there'll be plenty of time. We don't have to, the budget is not finalized. In the end, it's going to end up in a trash heap somewhere. So that's kind of where I was hoping to go tonight. But while they're still here, rather than making them wait, that's why I said in that earlier email, if you guys are amenable to that, I think we have a lot of expertise. We have one other person, Alex, who's not here, who can help us. Because there really are very good contracts out there for the processing, and I think even that we could use some guidance on what our bid package should look like. So that's a great idea to have that meeting. Yeah.
Another province, they did an RFP for what we did, which is collection and the hauler taking responsibility for it. And then they did a separate one for just hauling, they had broken it down. So they're doing a separate RFP for a reception center, for a processing center, to say what their per tonnage price would be. So, separate contract for a hauler and a separate one with the facility to accept the stuff.
And
so
I
we should be able to get that. And they didn't know the result of the last.
No, it's tomorrow.
Is it tomorrow?
How many facilities?
There's really only
Not
three.
many.
There's only
There's
three.
three. There's
Republic.
and then the transfer station that Bill's talking about is owned by Mascaro. There's a little bit higher fee if you use that one, but it's much closer. The other one is quite a ways up in Bucks County, Montgomery. I can't remember. Anyway, it's a ways away.
Way out there.
Right. Republic has a facility as the old BFI, and Waste Management also has a facility. They're really the only three. And there are smaller facilities that take like small amounts of glass and so on, but they're not going to bid on this contract. It's just too uncertain, and we're all asking for some amount of guarantee. We certainly want to ask the solicitor about any force majeure in the contract. You'd be making an economic and ecological decision, and yet we kind of want to be sure that we're going to guarantee that we process that processing price for a year or two or whatever we decide. So,
I hate that I'm even asking this question, but since the price of waste disposal is so much less, is discontinuing curbside recycling? Really?
It's a state mandate.
you
Okay.
have to have those three items.
If your population is 5,000 or more, you have to do curbside collection of at least 3 days.
But those three items can be, there's a host of things. You don't have to include glass. Glass has some value for us, and that we get paid by the state for our performance grant, a few $1,000s, and it's a heavy material. But a lot.
Yeah, aluminum and plastics where the value is right now.
And
Paper, I heard not. That's what they said. Mascara said in other province. Paper and glass are the closer to it.
Yeah.
And they're the heaviest things.
Right, yeah, it's complicated, and I think too, one of the things is, do you get locked into a certain mix in the recycling bin, or do you want some flexibility to change that? And if you change it, what are you guaranteeing the processor when you go out for bids? It's Nether's is very simple. Tell us your price per ton, so it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of numbers they get. I don't think B&L was making up their numbers. I think they were hedging that the market's going to be terrible. And I agree with Bill, I don't think they want to do it. I think they would much prefer to develop take over that responsibility, which we do for trash and yard waste. It would be kind of the same thing. So if that's okay, and these people are willing to sit through it again, I can try and set something up. Is that? And we'll have the advantage of having, two very different but good contracts and what kind of prices they got and who bid on it.
Great, thank you. Thanks for your input, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Rick, yes.
Good evening, Council. It's Rick Lee, President of the Swarthmore Borough Company, and it's our week. Finally, look at your calendar. It's Fire Prevention Week. So we don't get honored with just one day. We get a whole week. So we have been extremely busy with all the schools and nursery schools, and starting last week and continuing through this week. Tomorrow we'll be up at Swarthmore College doing a couple fire prevention things as well. So we hit pretty much from nursery school all the way up to the college level, and are very busy doing that. So just wanted to remind the public to check your smoke detectors. They don't have a date on them. It's probably a good time to change them out. All new smoke detectors now have a manufacture date, and they're only good for 10 years. So, and those are people that have alarm systems in their house, and if your alarm smoke detectors are pretty yellow, as the plastic has slowly gone from white to yellow, it's also probably a very good time to call your alarm company and have them upgrade your system, because 10 years is what the government and the industry recognizes as a fail-safe. If you want to be safe, and we want everyone to be safe. And with that said, instead of changing your batteries, they now come with 10-year lithium-ion batteries. So for the life of the smoke detector, it has a battery that lasts the entire time. No changing batteries, no hearing beeps. So we strongly recommend all residents upgrade their systems so that everybody is fire safe. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rick. Anyone else, public, that would care to address council? If not, the first public comment period is closed. We'll have another one towards the end of the meeting. Just want to check here for a second. Right, so I really don't have anything other than the public hearing we've already had that on my part of the agenda, except that I just wanted to remind everyone to keep the provisions of Pennsylvania Sunshine Act in mind in our communications with one another. And, the bottom line there is a quorum of council members is 4 people. So if it's fewer than 4, it doesn't apply. Obviously, if you're not talking about borough business, it doesn't apply either. But if there are discussions, whether they be on social media or email or in person or however they be, where there are a quorum of council members present and there is a discussion of borough business, which is, I think, and Bob can correct me if I'm wrong, but can be rather broadly defined. It's not just legislation, but also policies and that kind of thing. Let's just keep that in mind. Those kind of discussions have to be, if there's more than a quorum, it's got to be done in an open meeting. Bob, would you care to add anything to that?
I mean, I think, emailing is fine for scheduling and for logistics, but when we start talking substance, you should keep it to 3 or fewer.
Okay, great. And I guess one other thing, and Bob, I'm going to look for your guidance and confirmation on this point as well. I think sometimes there's an issue of what individual members of council can or can't say to members of the public. But as I understand, not just the Sunshine Law, but the law on that sort of subject in general, it's perfectly fine for an individual member of council, for example, to have a discussion with a member of the public and talk about whatever they want to talk about. Obviously, an individual member of council doesn't represent the borough, doesn't even represent council, but he or she may have opinions and be willing to discuss those with members of the public, and that's perfectly okay. Am I right on that, Bob, as well?
Oh, yeah. You do not lose your First Amendment rights by becoming a council.
Okay. So really the sunshine law provisions, it's really, it's a matter of process when there's a quorum present. That's really what it comes down to. That's all I've got to say on that. Lauren, Environment Committee?
I'm going to do my report next week. Okay.
Next week?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Mike, Finance?
Yes, I'm going to go a little bit out of order, if that's okay. Nancy's asked for the consideration of bills for payment to be approved tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and make that. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to review those. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to approve bills to pay for the month totaling $370,745.28.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries.
Okay, so really the other three things are kind of all together because the committee report really talked about both the budget and the borough auditor. I'll start with the borough auditor. I'm just going to discuss it tonight and we can vote on it next week. Is that acceptable in a time horizon? The committee has recommended that we retain Barbara Kane Thornton Company. This would be the fourth year or fifth year? Fourth, Gene? Sixth year, okay. So, which, at some point it's probably healthy to change, but they have done a very good job, we feel like, and also the rates are quite reasonable for the full audits. It's $14,200 for next year, and then they do the pension plans as well, $2,100 for next year. So personally, just having seen what costs are, it seemed very reasonable to me, and the committee agreed. So I don't know if there's any questions about the auditor, potentially approving them for next week. Any questions, concerns? No? Okay. Moving on to the budget. Again, we're still in the preliminary stage of the budget, so everything here is obviously preliminary. Ultimately, we don't need to approve it until December, right? Is that technically? I think ideally we would approve it next month.
We always do a proposed budget in November, but you can make changes.
Yeah. So this is the preliminary. Then next month, even still will be somewhat preliminary, but really closer to a final product. And myself to blame because some parts have been left out because the General Government Committee has not, because I was not there, has not approved or reviewed the proposals that would go into this. So just to quickly summarize, hopefully everyone's had a chance to, if not look at the actual numbers, to look at the memo that Jane was kind enough to prepare. I'll just quickly give some highlights of what the preliminary budget is and what went into it, as opposed to getting into the details line by line. It's a 3% cost of living increase for all employees. If you look at points 2 and 3, they somewhat offset each other, which is a $50,000 reduction in the funding of the capital reserve fund. The committee felt pretty comfortable about that, only because the level now is about will be $337,000. We're still contributing $37,000 this year in the budget. And given what the capital needs are and what we can see in the future, we felt comfortable. Obviously, it's a one-time thing. The third bullet point, which is the $60,000 increase in funding for the Swarthmore Fire and Protective Association, is really related to the grant that we have talked about very regularly. This is the high point in that grant. Obviously, next year, if you look back at the base year before the grant came in, it was about $190,000. So now this will put it at $300,000. So that's a debate for next year, and that certainly would impact many other things if we chose to keep it at that level or bring it back towards where it was prior to the grant. So that's, we felt like we had to approve that as a council. So we wanted to leave that $60,000 in, so that would be $300,000 for the Swarthmore Fire and Protective Association within the budget. And then it's been recommended for a $3,000 increase for the Swarthmore Town Center, a $9,510 increase for the public library, that does include the $2,300 from the Aging in Place initiative. And then finally, as we talked about, and previous meetings, this preliminary budget has a $48,500 decrease in debt service payments due to all the prepayments we made last year. We'll see that into the future, so in other words, that will level off from here on out. Ultimately, that leaves a budget deficit close to $27,000 if we didn't do anything else, and we put all those things in as I just described. We're expecting roughly the fund balance to be $400,000 at the end of the year, not including this $27,000 deficit. But even if you factor that in, for instance, that would be $373,000, which would be right kind of in the middle of the range of what we target of between 5 and 10% of revenues in the general fund reserve. I'll stop now. I'll be happy to answer any questions, concerns.
I have a couple specific questions
Yeah.
about the numbers before I
Sure.
get into more complicated questions. So for this year, we actually have like a $23,000 surplus.
For this, you mean the 2019 you're talking about?
2019, yes.
That could be right.
That's what it says.
Yeah.
Unless I'm reading it incorrectly.
I mean, that's an anticipation, right?
Right.
We're not talking
Right.
2019 yet.
So does
Projected.
does that roll into the next?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying, the 400,000 estimate that we'll have at the end of the year, that's incorporated in that number.
Okay.
And then that's not that 400,000 is not factoring in the 27,000 for 2020 deficit if this budget became final. Obviously, there's still time and things could change.
Is it typical for us to end up with a surplus at the end of the year, or is that?
No, I think we generally try to run balanced. I mean, obviously, it's very difficult. I mean, I'll put it to Jamie when we're close, but given the variability and particularly in expenses, it's always hard to. I mean, and some of our revenue numbers are variable, so fortunately, everybody pays their taxes, but there's other building code fees and other things like parking, all those sorts of things,
Right.
transfer tax that can change from year to year. So I think ideally it would be balanced every single year, but I think last year probably we were piling for a small deficit and we ended up with a surplus, but that's just luck.
And my other, and this might be a question that I can take up with Janie and committee, but I noticed that there is there's a budget for planning, zoning, and code enforcement, and I was just wondering what the heck that's for.
Sometimes we'll buy code books, it's for members of the planning commission to go to seminars if they want to, things like that. Reprinting the zoning map, that's different thing, we have a separate line item for that. So things like, again, things like that.
And we actually overspent that this year?
Probably because several members of the zoning hearing board and the planning commission went to some seminars as well, yes, I'd have to look it up.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I would be interested in seeing the breakdown on
Sure,
that,
no problem.
if you'd be okay, because I'm kind of surprised.
Right.
$57,000 in training, so.
Oh, no, which line item are you looking at?
Line 8.
I
Under
thought you were
general
looking at the
government.
one-
It includes code enforcement.
Yeah, that includes $25,000 to our building inspector, it's in there.
Oh, okay, so there's
Yeah.
a salary.
I thought you
there
were
as
going
well.
to, correct. And actually also in there is the, was it line 8? Yeah, so that includes the code enforcement in-house salary for Puzzy, who does the use and occupancy inspections. It's a $25,000 line item for the outside building inspector. And then, as Bob just mentioned, it's the solicitor fees.
Okay,
for the
all right, so
hearing
those are,
board.
okay.
There's a $1,000 actually called planning and zoning, but you wouldn't see that, that's part of my backup material.
Yeah, okay, all right, that makes a lot more sense,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mhm.
And then I have some bigger questions, but I don't want to, I'm kind of hogging the floor here, so if anybody else wants to get in. All right, so I have 2 more items that I would like to bring under consideration in the budget. And one of them would be a salary increase for the borough manager, which is something that's been bounced around a little bit. Just comparison with some other boroughs and what's being paid. I think, we're talking maybe around like $6,000, $7,000 as an increase. So just to throw that out there.
Would that be a general government discussion, or where would that go?
I mean, committee-wise, it would fit with general government.
Okay. So we can, because we still have to look at
You
some of
you
the other
guys
things.
have not actually decided your
Discuss what we have.
your recommendations.
Right, so we could add that to the list, right, for that.
So you should.
We should, yeah.
You should add that.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, take it into committee and.
And then we can bring it back to here.
And you can do that in executive session if you want.
Okay.
Right.
Anything else?
Yeah, because that's true, Rob, because it's a personnel matter, so, right.
And then the other, and I don't think this would be an executive committee issue, is again, bringing up my issue of establishing compensation for borough council members, which we would need to do by ordinance, but I think it would also need to be written into the budget. Now, I don't know if it would need to go into this year's budget, because it wouldn't actually take effect until new members
Yeah,
were
it would be in the
elected, so-
2020 budget, because new members will be sworn in in 2020.
Okay. Although I was under the impression that anyone voting on it,
I don't think so. I think that the new term has to start.
all right,
Because this election, the voters can decide that you don't deserve that and vote you out of office.
Yeah.
So, if you have to have that's a good point. You have to,
well, what it says,
And that was
the
tax
language I have
collectors.
is become effective at the beginning of the next term of the member of council.
now I know with tax collectors, you have to establish their pay before the primary, so that you're not like making a decision based on
Who it is.
who made it through the primary.
Right,
I'll
right.
need to look into whether that applies to council people.
Okay, so it could be
It
2021
might
budget,
be,
which
it would
wouldn't affect
actually be
anybody.
2022,
Yeah.
if that's the case, unless, yeah.
Yeah.
That's also something, I mean, I guess the policy issue is something that the General Government Committee needs to consider.
Right, and then we would bring it to here.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, Jane
Yeah,
asked me
okay.
that question before. I completely
Question,
forgot
if I
about this
may.
primary.
Oh, no, that's okay. I thought general government did talk about it.
So it's been brought up, we have talked about it a couple of times, and it was decided that we wanted to bring it to council to have a discussion and then take it back to committee. So if we could have that discussion now, that would be great. And then we can bring it back to committee and discuss, And we also wanted some information that we just got from
All right. So,
Okay. I have another
Discussion.
question for the solicitor then. This would be something that we ourselves would vote on. It's not something that would be a voter referendum. It's something well, hold on, I ask Bob, thank you. It's not something they would decide.
Yeah, there's, in Pennsylvania law, there's only certain items you can submit for referendum, that's not allowed.
So can you explain for everybody how it does work when you vote and who it applies to?
It would, you can't receive it if you were in office during a term when you voted for it. So if you, and again, I can't recall for this office, you have to establish it before the primary. If that's the case, everybody's out of luck for 2 years. If it's not the case, and you could do it December, then the person, whoever is sworn in January would be entitled to receive pay, and the ones who are still in the middle of the term would not. So you'd have some council people entitled to be paid and some not, for a 2-year period. That's going to be the case no matter what, because you're always going to have staggered terms.
And is there any prohibition against not accepting it?
No, that's
A personal
yeah,
preference?
yes.
Because I will say, I will not accept it if that is voted for. It's never been done here. I don't think we should receive salary, and I would not take it if given it. So that's my discussion of it.
So we did discuss that aspect of it, and when we did talk about it in committee, and there were some who believed that people could just refuse or not refuse based on, their own personal feelings on the issue. There was another discussion saying that everyone would get a check. Everyone would get the money, but then what you do with it is up to you. So if you want to put the check back into something and government, if you want to give it back to, I'm not going to give an example because I feel like that wouldn't be appropriate, but you
No,
know,
I want to
if
give you
you-
an example
like-
though.
Okay, so like,
Explain how
if you
think
wanted
it
to
would work.
donate it back to, let's say, SRA, if you want to donate it to the public libraries, you know, or if you wanted to give it back because you don't feel like it should be, you don't want to accept it, but you think it should go to the town and offset things, then you'd be able to do that. So that's one other option. And point being that it would, not accepting it could stigmatize the people who do accept it, and then it would kind of, it would just, it would.
So it wouldn't be private, it would be on the public record.
Right, well, all this is in the public record.
Yeah,
it has
I
to
mean,
be.
it's not like, you know, normally if someone gave me $500, I can do whatever I want
Right.
with it. But in this case, it's out there, yeah, it should be.
Right, and so that, I mean, I guess that's why it was, that's kind of a sticky point, and, you know, we've discussed that a little bit. You know, Betsy, do you want to talk about the rationale behind?
Well, I think there's a couple rationales, and some of it is also based on the fact that we've been given the impression that we current council members actually put in a lot more time than previous council members used to in terms of the amount of times that committees meet, the amount of committees that exist, that sort of activity. There's something to this about making it more accessible to everyone to run for office, to hold these positions. So a single parent, or a younger person, or an older person on a fixed salary, or, you know, just to kind of, you know, someone who has to pay for childcare in order to, you know, serve in council, or to pay for transportation, or other kinds of costs. You know, it's just kind of a way to compensate that. The maximum amount that we could award would be $2,500 for the year. So it's not a salary, it's not a huge amount of money. It's a compensation for the time that's invested. And I guess a big part of the rationale is making it more accessible to people who aren't gentlemen farmers. Just going back in history a bit, I think. So,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know, and maybe Jane or Bob or David could comment on this. The committees have been the same since I've been on council. None have been added. I feel like I've put in the same amount of work or more than I ever have. And, you know, if we're going to talk about how much it costs, I mean, I feel like I devote a lot of free legal work to the borough, that if I were charging an hourly rate, and I think Ross does the same sometimes, I won't speak for him, but I just feel like that's part of it. I've never questioned that. I understand the point you're making, but I don't see how $2,500 a year is going to entice people who, I don't think anybody, in my view, you may disagree, is barred from running for council. Anybody who wants to run for council can run for council. I would be very surprised if the not being paid was some sort of a hindrance for people from running. I think that if people want to be paid for being on council, people should just say in the meeting, I'd like to be paid for being on council. I think that's what should be said, if that's what people want.
I mean, it's interesting to me, even in what you're saying, that you know, are kind of donating services but you don't want to be compensated for that.
I don't, because I feel like that's what I took on when I ran for public office. I do get paid to be the county register of wills. That too is not a whole lot of money, but I do get paid for it. But I understood when I ran for this that it was not something I was going to be paid for. But, you know, that's me.
And there are, you know, like in the profession that Sarah and I are in, a lot of people have an hourly compensation, and a lot of people work in the evenings. So it would be very possible in today's world that someone would have to give up hours of earning time in order to attend meetings such as this. So again, it's a way to sort of compensate for that, for the loss of income that's involved in taking time away from billable hours to be here. So that's another piece of what kind of the thinking behind this is. And when I say historically in council, I don't mean in the last 4 or 6 years. I'm talking, you know, if we're going back historically, I'm talking 20 years ago. or 30 years ago. There was just less time.
Well, what are you basing, what is that based on that thought? Where are you getting that from, that people spent less time on it
From
back
Jane.
then? Oh, Jane.
But, you know, and that's really, you know,
Maybe we
that's
should
not
spend less
much
time
of
in
a piece of
committees.
it. Right, and, you know, to me, there's something about volunteering to run our government. Because it's not, you know, it's not a community organization, it's not the co-op, it's not SRA. It's not things that people are doing to boost our community or benefit our community. We're literally operating the community. And so, you know, there's something weird in my mind that catches about the idea of that being a voluntary position and not a compensated position.
Well, see, I'd rather have people who are in it who don't care about being compensated for it. But that's just my view. So to me, you really want to do it if you don't care that you're not paid. But that's me. You know, that's what I think.
I have a question. Has anybody come to your general government committee from the public and said that they want
So they want,
this to happen?
Council members to be paid.
Yes.
No.
Has anybody from any of the political parties who've come up with a candidate for council come to the committee and said, we have difficulty getting candidates because you're not paid?
No, no.
But there's definitely difficulty getting candidates. That is something that has been.
You're
brought to
saying
our
that
attention.
the committees have come and said they want this compensation?
No, that's
No,
not.
that's not what she said.
No, I'm saying that there is
Nobody has
difficulty
said
That was
getting
my
candidates.
question. That was my question. Has
Just-
anybody come in, other than council members, and said that they want this payment to be made?
I would say that the majority of the public probably has no idea whether we're paid or not. It certainly wasn't something that I was aware of before I was on council.
Okay, so I'm just asking. No, I'm hearing that nobody other than council members has proposed this or suggested that it's necessary. That's all.
And I do think that most of the councils in the surrounding area in Delaware County are compensated.
Betsy, can you get some numbers on that?
Yeah, Jane ran the numbers at one point, but.
I think I gave them to you last year.
I think, anecdotally, I think every municipality, except for Lansdowne, which is Swarthmore.
Even Rose Valley?
I don't
No,
know.
Rose Valley.
I think Rose Valley is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
In the county, you think?
believe
I
so.
feel like that's, I didn't do everything, but it
Trying
sounds.
to recall a discussion years ago, and that's my
Yeah.
recollection. I know Lansdowne doesn't pay to represent them. I know East Lansdowne does, and Gaten does, but the nurse was there.
Do they pay that standard 2,000?
They pay whatever the max is. And it's population driven, so East Lansdowne, smaller population, smaller pay, you know.
Well, this would also, along with this, you know, the mayor, I think, should also get compensated. It wouldn't just include council.
Yeah, I do think if I'm right, the compensation for municipalities with over 5,000 residents is 5,000 a year.
In the mayor.
For the mayor.
Not for council, no. It's
Council's
2,500. It's in the memo.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, then I
you're
get
correct. Yeah, you get more.
But you don't get to vote on it.
Yes,
But you can veto, you know, I mean, you have the.
And you can give your opinion on how you feel about it here, but we'll take it back to committee, so if you have any thoughts on it, please
Yeah,
share.
I understand Betsy's position. I tend to agree more with Mary's position, but I'm in a situation where perhaps I don't need compensation. I didn't run for compensation. There was never a decision whether or not I would go because it was not compensated or not compensated. I would feel probably similar that I would choose not to take compensation, but that's, again, that's a personal decision. It's got nothing to do with the realities. I was unaware of that most municipalities are compensated. I was not, I really wasn't aware that we had compensation that in that many municipalities in Delaware County.
Just one final comment on the suggestion that people would take this pay and then give it away to something else. Just for myself as a taxpayer, I don't like the idea of paying taxes out of my pocket to give to somebody else to then give that money to their charity. I'd rather give the money myself rather than be taxed and have somebody else decide what charity to give it to.
Well, it could stay in you could just refuse to take the pay and it would stay in the budget. It would stay in the county, stay in the general fund.
It's just, it wouldn't come to you at all. It would stay with the borough.
Right, so it doesn't have to go to a charitable organization.
Yeah, I guess you were thinking about it as sort of a self-imposed condition, because I don't think it's part of the
Yeah, I
law.
don't think you can compel someone to take salary if they don't want.
Yeah. And just to clarify, I'm not hearing that this would change anyone's opinion, but it is true that when I started, the committees did not meet as much. Members of council didn't go to the zoning hearing board, they didn't go to the planning commission, to the EAC. I think that has evolved. So if you look in the minutes, everything was always done by committee. And certainly before my years here, it could have been very different. Maybe there was just a lull for maybe between 1990 and then it started picking up again. And I think I've said that more when council members have said they feel compelled to meet every month. And I say there was a time when people did not, for whatever reason, meet every month. And I'm not really hearing that that's really what it's about, the hours changing. It's more a matter of principle. Just want to clarify.
And I do think one other point that I think is approved is a sense of, and you brought this up, which is childcare and those sorts of things. I think actually we have a mechanism now that if somebody wanted to do that, isn't that correct?
No.
Rob did not seem comfortable
I
with
mean,
that.
I think if you want to do that, I would want to get an advisory commission, opinion from the State Ethics Commission, because there's complicated rules on what's compensation and what's not.
That would be difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I would want, I mean, if you want to do that, we can pursue it, but I would want to get an ethics commission advice.
Lauren wants to know what you're talking about. She's not.
Sorry.
I understand, you're talking now about compensation specifically, or reimbursement or whatever for childcare.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Which is complex.
Well, yeah, I'll give
That, I
it,
just
so,
listened to the transition.
the borough code allows, authorizes everybody to be on medical insurance. And I will tell you, I'm aware of a borough that used to have their council people on full family medical benefits. The rate is $25,000 a year. That's permitted. And in this borough, there was somebody who said, well, I already have it from my employer, but I have to pay a $200 a month copay. How about I get that instead? And the Ethics Commission disallowed that. You can pay the $25,000, but you can't pay $200 a month. You know, so that's what gives me the pause on that I want to get clear. So.
It is hard for me to believe that someone would run for government office with the intention of trying to live on $2,500 a year. But at the same time, it's very easy to imagine a situation where someone would lose money being on this council to pay for child care. And that, you know, so you're actually then paying for the privilege of serving local governments, which is sort of a weird position. And I do think that in its current configuration, it could be limiting to some people who might be interested in serving, but would stand to lose financially in different ways. Along with that, you know, I had also proposed that we could certainly pass this in such a way that even if reelected, no one who voted for it would ever benefit from this. So the compensation would only apply to people who were not on council now. Yeah.
All right. Any further discussion?
Well, I just I
Yes,
feel
please.
like I could be a swing voter on this. I see the logic of it in a way, and but I don't love the idea, but I'm trying to think about why I don't, and that's kind of where I'm at. I guess, again, I mean, none of us here ran for the money or anything. It's really more of an honorarium it's just a little bit, which is fine. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I'm just thinking about it. I would like to know, I kind of like to know what the public thinks. I think that would, I don't know, it would make me feel better. And I want to know more about other municipalities and how they came to this, just out of curiosity. Has it been a long-standing?
Yeah, that was
Is it
the
a
question.
trend toward payment?
When Betsy asked me, none of these are new, so she said, how do they come to the decision? It's been
It's
years.
been 2 and
There's nobody around who would know. I don't know of anybody who's
Yeah,
enacted it.
exactly. I
Yeah.
can't think of any municipality that has changed it, that has gone from paid to unpaid or vice versa. And they have all, everyone I'm aware of that has the statutory limit. It's like nobody's being paid less than the 24. Everybody where they are paid gets what they're entitled to based on the population.
It's always been available, it's just, do we want to avail ourselves of it, is the question.
Is there any way that we could present this to the public as like a ballot referendum question, just
That's what I had asked.
yes. I mean, I know that's not how we would enact it.
There's a limited number, you can't do whole, there's a limited number of issues you are entitled to get on the ballot. And, the Board of Elections is not going to accept a petition that's not one of those 20 permitted categories.
I mean, the part of the reason we wanted to discuss it tonight was to bring it to everyone's attention before talking about it again in committee. So I would encourage people, members of the public, to attend the committee meeting or send me, the chair of the General Government Committee, their feedback on it, and I'll share it with the committee. So we try to push that out there somehow that work. Yeah.
And certainly, they can always share their thoughts by how they vote. So.
Right. But I mean, if people are, I think it's a good idea for sure to get everybody's temperature on this in general. And then we can continue talking about it and see what happens.
All right, is there anything more on that specific aspect of the proposed budget for 2020?
Or anything else, if I could on that, I did want to point out there are some capital requests. That budget I usually don't put together until November. I don't know if there are any questions about.
Yeah, I have a question,
Okay.
actually, and that has to do with the playground equipment at Thatcher Park. Could you bring council up to date?
Sure, I mean, we are, every year we have a visit from our risk control folks at the insurance company, and we really have 2 playgrounds that we monitor. One is Thatcher Park, the other one is the one that's actually, the land is owned by Cades, but the borough pays for the equipment. We actually replaced the swings there a couple of years ago because they were dangerous. It's older wooden equipment. Thatcher Park has been populated twice, both not at the expense of Borough Council or the taxpayers. It's always been a group of moms and dads who've put it together. And then 2 of the pieces of equipment that are probably 20 years old. And while nobody is in danger in any way right now, it's one of those things that we're going to have to replace. I do think that there is funding available, there's grant money available. We probably have organizations in town that would be happy to contribute. I just wanted to put it out there. Because he was immediately on doing everything that he possibly could to make sure that it was safe, but it's just a matter of time.
It's older than 20 years. When
When
my almost 20-year-old was flying there, it was old.
The fire truck is old. Some stuff was done by that second wave. I can't remember what it is. And somebody, did you donate the turtle or the dog?
Yeah, our family donated the turtle.
The dog was so fair though.
Carrie Shankwell ran the last
She did,
Yeah.
version of it. And
But
that
not
was,
everything was
that was
replaced
20
then.
That's going back a ways.
Right,
That's 20 years.
and when I came 30 years ago, it had just, because he had just been working with a different group of parents to get the first set in.
All right, so that's something on our radar screen
Yeah.
anyway. I think what you're saying is that we may be able to find grant money or other sources of money
Right.
to build it. And it's nothing that has to be done like now.
No, it's fine as a budget item for next year, and if it's a budget item for next year, you know, this would sort of be the maximum as we look for other ways to assist with it.
And we
David?
did talk about
Yes.
it in Public
you
Works
did?
extensively, yes,
Oh,
I would
okay.
imagine Ross would.
well, and the only thing I'd add on that is that we talked about how it's important to get some of the parents and families that are using it involved because there are certain treatments that, you know, like various safety treatments that some people might not like, others that people might like more. So whatever changes are done should be acceptable to the community that's using it. So that's a reason to involve the community.
Great.
And Jane, when you mentioned capital expenses, that's not part of the budget.
Correct. All right, so we have that, like the capital reserve fund, I think I said at the end of this year, I think we'll have a balance of $300,000. And as Mike said at the beginning, we're putting a little bit less in this year, only 37,000 as opposed to 87 as we have in other years because of the fire company expense.
All right, any more discussion on the proposed budget?
Are we good on the fire company part, the extra $60,000? I mean, Michael talked about it, and that was, we talked about that in public safety, and Rick came and explained to us the rationale for it, and it is tied to the SAFER grant.
Right,
So-
I mean, I think we need to fulfill our obligations
That's it.
under the SAFER grant,
Yep.
correct? So,
Yes.
and you know, what the future may bring, okay, Sarah.
The cushion going off. yes.
No, that's not what I said.
I actually do not anticipate these unknowns. I doubt we'll get the health insurance premiums.
Yeah,
The trash and recycling, we're not going to know for quite a while. Those last two are really pass-through costs. So whatever increases there are, we have for sewage treatment, that will show up in our sewer fee, and whatever costs we have for trash and recycling once we open the trash fee. So there's really probably not a lot more to discuss next week. I mean, you can bring it up, but I mean, absent hearing anything that you want changed from what you got last week, probably just wait until November to see how, what new information we have.
okay.
And with that said, the finance committee, just given, we're going to have some recommendations from the general government, which I'm part of.
Right.
We'll be planning on meeting on the 21st.
The 21st.
Yeah.
7:30 p.m.?
Yeah, I would anticipate it would be relatively quick, because we've already went through the remaining parts of the budget, but with the new things coming in, it might take a few minutes, so.
Wait, I think it might be until the 20th. I think the general
About-
government meets
about
on the
this-
21st, because that's a week after Columbus.
So do I get pushed back another week with that?
And Columbus Day, she was the conflict with Columbus
Yeah.
Day. She's the,
15th.
because we're meeting, council's meeting.
Right.
Tuesday, the 15th.
Right.
So we usually meet the third Monday, and so
Right.
I'm pretty sure that was.
What did you move to?
You move to the 21st?
I think, right, because that was the
I
third
remember.
Monday.
Okay, so maybe I'm
We'll
wrong,
talk
it
about
should be the 28th.
The 28th.
I'm the fourth Monday, so if the fourth Monday is the 28th, then
Yes.
that's.
Yeah.
Is it,
28th.
is the 28th the fourth Monday?
First match.
Yep.
Okay.
And you're the 21st.
Right,
Okay, fair enough.
yeah.
I had general government on my
I
mind.
know, good, I was imagining.
Yes, the 28th is the fourth Monday.
Okay, 28th then, apologize.
All right, great.
And that's all I have, unless there's any other questions.
Thanks, Mike. Sarah, general government.
So we met last month and we did hear about the budget requests and reviewed that from the library, the seniors, and Swarthmore Town Center. And we'll continue that discussion next time when we meet. We also talked and revised our event permit application process. And we changed it to account for the increasing amount of permit applications that include included serving alcohol on borough property, to make sure we were considering liability and safety issues that were involved with that. So we worked on that, and Jane revised it, and we have a new form that we're using. We also approved the horticultural society event that happened already, the same night as the Oktoberfest, which is fun. I'm already attended that. And I think that's about it.
Thank you, Sarah. Betsy, planning and zoning?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is to move forward with ordinance 1087. So.
Usually,
We would vote on that.
vote on it next week, yeah.
week,
To see if anyone has any questions.
But if there's any more, we had the hearing.
Yeah. I know, I was ready, because it's gonna be pulled out again.
All right, yeah, so any questions about ordinance 1087? Okay, planning and zoning did not meet this month, however, I think a couple of us attended the planning commission meeting in September, where Swarthmore College presented some of their preliminary plannings for the expansion of Sharples Hall. Sharples?
Yeah,
Sharples.
Sharples.
My brain wants to call it Sharples, so.
Sharples, not Charles.
Yeah, and having this being my first experience of sitting through the college, presenting one of these, I was pretty impressed. They're considering the environmental implications, the implications for their arboretum, the land use. It looks like, I was pretty impressed with the project overall. Marty, you were there for some of it, and I know Jane was present. Like I said, it was preliminary. They're going to do some preliminary approvals, I think, and then hopefully start to move forward. So again, it's an interesting project. Planning and zoning will meet this Thursday, the 10th at 7:30. And I think that's everything I got.
Thank you.
Oh, there was also a zoning board hearing, but.
Yeah. I was gonna say, I think you have an agenda on it, but it's the bed and breakfast. Isn't that what's on the agenda for planning and zoning? Bed and breakfast.
I was thinking of it as short-term rental.
Short-term rentals.
Yes.
David, I have a question.
Yes.
Betsy, I have a question. I attended that meeting also, so I have a question, which is, the college said they want to, in my understanding, skip the come in once and then present a plan and then come in another plan. They want to do like a one thing.
Fine.
So,
Preliminary plan.
yes, and does that, who approves that? Does council approve that? Does the committee?
It's a
approve?
waiver they need to get, because the ordinance requires that you vote, but it's pretty custom. It's a very customary and usual request.
Yes, that's all.
So they'll present it to the planning commission with that waiver request on there, and the planning commission sounded like they would say yes.
Yeah.
But it is really your call when you
Yeah.
get it. You could tell them, no, you gotta come back.
And we get it after planning commission.
Yeah,
And I assume
It goes to the county.
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So is that similar to our ordinance process, that the county reviews it and comments?
Yeah,
Can the county refuse it?
no.
Okay. Thank you, thanks for that question.
Anything else for planning and zoning?
No?
All right, thank you, Betsy. Meredith, public safety?
Thank you. I guess first, do we want to do the conditional offer of employment?
Let's do that.
We need to do a motion?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to confess, even though we met the officer, I still don't know what his last name is. Thank you so much. All right. So, I move that the Borough of Swarthmore makes a conditional offer of employment as a patrol officer to George Dunn of, I'll just say Fallcroft, Pennsylvania. I won't give his address out.
Now, why do we get to vote on that?
You can vote on anything. You can vote if you are, no, actually you can't, because I think we advertised for adoption next week.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right,
just
so
seems weird.
there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Mr. Dunn will receive his conditional offer of employment. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. What's
Okay,
next, Mary?
okay, so thank you for that. And I wanted to say too that we will not be meeting public safety our usual evening, which would be the 15th of October, because we had to move Borough Council meeting over to the 15th because of Columbus Day. So public safety will be meeting on Thursday, October 24th at 7:30 p.m. in this room. And then, I guess what I wanted to mention were a couple of things. The committee report from our meeting last month is essentially, we had a big discussion of speeding on the major roads. I'll say Yale Avenue, North Chester Road, and I think the takeaway from all of that was we are going to step up, the police department is going to step up its efforts to enforce speeding with the NRAD machine, and you saw in the budget memo that we're going to buy some more of those flashing speed signs, hopefully, and make them permanent in the borough, 2 more, and hopefully that will calm those things down. The other big ticket items were the fire company came to present their budget request to us. We already talked about that. The police department also came to present its budget request. There were a few line item things that there's already money in the budget now for them to buy, so we discussed those things. But what I wanted to bring up, and we did not come out of our committee with a firm recommendation, but I think everybody needs to know it, that the police department is looking for, would like to hire another officer in addition to the one that we just made the conditional offer of employment to tonight. So what they would like to get is a total of 8 officers plus the working chief would be optimal in their view. So we had a long discussion about that and where we ended up, and it was mainly, well, it was all our suggestion, but Betsy landed on it. It was a good suggestion that we had talked about looking more into hiring part-time officers at the time when we hired Chief Stufflet. He's going to look more at that and try to implement that and then come back to us again if he still feels that they need another officer, and then we can discuss it at that time. So there's no budget request or anything right now to add another officer, but I felt like we needed, the committee wanted to tell everybody that that is something that's on the horizon. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about, which I mentioned to you, I was going to do this. I got a request today, I guess Ross and I both received it, but we heard from a resident of Amherst Avenue who would like to have, she and her neighbors, a deer cull in Little Crum Creek. So I talked briefly to the borough solicitor, and I'm hoping he can sort of tell us again how this works. But the idea is there's, I think there's an overpopulation of deer everywhere in the borough. They're out there looking at me when I drive my car at night. But at any rate, this would be done. I know the college already does one, but obviously that's private property. They're asking us about Little Crum Creek Park because the borough owns Little Crum Creek Park. I mentioned to the person I spoke to about, gee, it seems like it's right in the middle of a residential area, but then they explained to me, they thought what the rules were, you do it from a blind, and it's, so I guess the question is, and I don't know if we need to decide it this evening, but it would be something we would, I think, maybe next time take a vote on, or we can decide it tonight, but I didn't want to wait until we have a committee meeting and then have to come back in November to all of you about it. Wanted to just get it out there. So I don't know how you want to proceed.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, there's no obligation to vote on this unless somebody wants to make a motion for or against it.
Okay.
In the absence of a motion, it just doesn't happen.
Mhm.
So if somebody, if there's an advocate for it, they make a motion to do it, it gets voted on. Legally, the borough is the property owner, and the borough can decide whether to permit hunting on its property or not. There is a requirement that you be a certain number of feet from, you need the permission of people within a certain number of feet of where the hunting is occurring. But with archery hunting, it is a small radius, and Little Crum Creek, I think, probably you could, there's a portion of it where you would be within your rights to permit it if you wanted to. As to rifle hunting, I don't think it is too small an area, and you would not be able to do that without getting the consent of the neighboring property owners.
And she said bow and arrow. I left that out, but yeah, it would be archery.
Yeah.
So.
It's this is something you can decide to do or not do.
I don't think I don't want to speak for her, but she used the word deer call. That's very different than a deer hunt. The deer call is what Swarthmore College does, where they hire somebody
Yeah.
to bait the deer, and then they, after they've got
Right.
enough there, they
Yeah, they're
call the
not,
herd.
you're a good
Right,
point.
right.
Well, she
So
does
I-
want to hire somebody and she
Right,
wanted
she-
him to
she
come to
doesn't-
the
We still
community.
need, right, so at Swarthmore College, before they have the call, whoever it is, game commission actually requires a bow and arrow hunt from a blind, sort of a, kind of a deer, a more fair shot, I guess, at the deer before they're called. So I would guess that if it's from a blind, I would guess that she's talking about that as opposed to a call. I guess it really doesn't matter, but in both cases, it's not just open to the public, it's through one of these agencies like she's
yes.
talking
That's a
about.
good point.
So again, I don't know that she really meant a call, but it is a little different in people's minds because you really are enticing the deer to kill them, as opposed to
Well,
more of a free.
And you're not opening it up to the general public. You're
Right.
saying this particular, it's a hunting club, I think, that they use for the college. It's, it's a certain number of people. It's not that everybody who has a license who wants to go there.
I see.
Right.
Like state game lands, where if you have a license, you're entitled to do that.
And the idea is for the period they do that, you have to close the park.
You don't have to, but you should.
Yeah.
The college doesn't close, but they post. They put up notices that this period of time they're.
Right, the college doesn't, but with some places like Drum Creek, it would be closed.
There are private property owners in that area who have had perfectly legal hunting of deer on their property. And I do not believe they've notified him. I don't think so.
I don't think they have.
So that's another option, is for these individuals, probably not in Amherst Avenue, they probably don't have enough room, but there are other areas where private property owners have large enough properties that they can have their.
But in this instance, we're the property owner.
Correct.
We're the property
Well,
owner.
I just asked that because unlike, if a person across the street who lived there that had something in their property, that's a little different than if you have a public park where kids and people are walking around, boom, the animals killed in front of them, right?
Yeah, I probably would ask if you're not interested, you're not interested. If you are interested, I would recommend getting some advice from the insurance company.
It's interesting to me because recently in public safety, the whole issue of raccoons came up because of the rabid raccoon that was found in town. And I felt like the consensus on that was this is wildlife and there's nothing we can do about it. And that was in a situation where there was actually a rabid raccoon, so there was a danger to the public. I would have to really stretch my brain to think of deer as a danger. There's certainly a danger to hostas, but other than, I guess periodically someone hits one with a car, to me, there's even less of an argument that there's any danger here. And so the whole idea that was pretty clear that we couldn't do anything about raccoons, but we're considering doing something about deer, strikes me as a little bit.
Well, and archery hunted deer do not fall in place. They run off to die.
Right, whereas
And they're not
raccoons are
necessarily-
trapped in
And they're not going to
place.
stay necessarily in the park. They'll run where they want.
Right,
So,
right. And this would involve an investment by us, yes? We would be paying for this?
I don't think so.
I didn't get the
I
feeling
think
that
you
Green
could
has to
find-
be paid. I think.
I think there's plenty of
no, it
people
was-
would be glad for the permission.
No. They would pay, but they just wanted our permission as the property owner.
But we're talking about hiring someone who does this professionally.
The people were on, the residents
Oh,
were
oh,
on the
we
hire.
would be
It was
giving
my-
them
we're
permission
just-
to
They
hire
just want the permission to do it on our property that the borough owns.
So we would be giving them permission to hire someone to kill deer on our property?
I don't know if they're hiring or if they're trying to get some hunters they know. Or like the college, there's this club.
There was a guy that was, a man that was mentioned, and she said he could come to our meeting. I brought it up tonight because I wanted to get this out there, and also I just thought that it was going to delay it. I thought we'd want to make a decision one way or the other. I don't know, or we don't have to tonight. She can come with the gentleman to public safety on the 24th, and we can talk about it in the committee if you want. I mean, I'm certainly not advocating for it. I'm not, if you're asking me, do I want to make a motion to do it? The answer is no, I don't.
Maybe nobody does.
Maybe nobody does, and that's the question.
Right, and the college's deer call will affect the town's deer population.
Well, it should, yeah.
So, yeah.
Let me just say, I don't think it's a call because call is sharpshooters. And I don't think anyone is suggesting you're going to use a
No,
gun in the
no,
park.
she's
So I think
not.
she's talking about a bow and arrow hunt.
Yeah, it's just, whether she said cull or not, what she's saying is it's a gentleman that they would hire to do this. The question for us is, would we grant permission to do it in Little Chrome Creek Park? That's the question for us.
Well, it is actually an issue in the sense that, you know, if you hire a hunter, for example, or ask a hunter, give a hunter permission to do a bow hunt on borough property, you know, under Pennsylvania state game laws, there are limits on how many deer an individual hunter can take. So if you're contracting with one guy, you're not going to do much to the deer population. So I don't think, maybe, I don't know how much information or knowledge people have about that sort of thing, including the folks that have inquired about this. But if they think that they're going to have a person go in there with a bow and quote, call, close quote, the deer herd, that's not going to happen.
I think he brings
Because
up-
they're governed by state game laws.
Yeah, I think it's
So-
more than one person. I think he
Okay.
just organizes it or something.
Well, okay, but anyway, lots of unknowns there. But I guess,
I mean, and you know, if you don't, I'm not hearing any sentiment in favor of this, and I think it might be appropriate to not waste their time and tell them, I mean, you don't want the comment.
Yeah, if you don't
just-
want it,
if you're
why
just
should
not
they
open
come
I
to
don't
to
want
it.
it,
Yeah.
I'll go on the record.
Yeah.
Is anybody in favor of it, want to make a motion, I guess is the question.
right, so the floor is open. If anyone would care to make a motion one way or the other. If not, and if there's no more discussion, then we'll just move on. A motion pro or contra this idea? I'm not hearing one, so any further discussion? Then I guess that's that. We can move to the next item on the agenda.
Okay.
Do you have anything
I
else?
don't, that was
Okay.
it.
Okay.
That was it.
Okay, great. Oh, one question I had on the speed
Yeah.
signs. I noticed there was, I think it was in the capital expenditure
Yeah.
budget, a small amount of money.
For two of them.
Yeah, for two of them.
Mhm.
Is that something that, I mean, do we need to approve that or?
Well, I don't know, I was talking after the meeting, and
Yeah.
Cuzzy said, oh, I just got this thing, twin pack special for a radar speed sign, two for $5,499. And it's kind of better than the ones we have, which cost the same because they collect data, speed data, volume data as they go back. So I talked to Mary, and I thought, boy, what would be great is if we bought two now and then put in the budget for two more for next year. And these would be permanent. They could be solar, which is nice. They do have a battery backup. The solar thing is kind of vague, so you want those more in permanent installations because they're a bit of a pain to move around, so that would be a good application
And they
for
say
it.
slow down.
And she was even, they say, they can give a little message on it, yeah, slow down. And then she said it can go in stealth mode, where you can turn it off, but it's still collecting data, so you can see how it's working when it's on. So you can actually, as a council, you would be able to say, we really are doing something, because look, when this sign is on, the cars are going slower. I like anything that says stealth mode. So I don't know if people want to, and we certainly, this is not a lot of money, we have enough money, probably even in the police budget, to buy a couple of these this year. It's below the bid amount, so there's nothing there. And then put for more in the budget next year. And if they seem to be working, you can always buy more next year.
I did ask if they were warranted, and they are.
And they are, okay. Do we need a vote or is just
Yeah,
a
if
sense?
it's not a budgeted item, I think you
We
should.
should
The
vote.
article will love to, even our friendly auditors will love to see that.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
All right, let's have, if someone wants to make a motion,
That's just gonna be
let's
so
have a
big.
motion.
I have to remember what they're called.
They are.
Read the thing, I can
The
make it.
two-pack.
The two-pack.
It's like jewel pack or something.
Okay, all right, give me a second to think about this. And this comes out of the capital?
I'll probably take it out of capital, yeah.
Okay. I move that the borough make a purchase of $5,499 from its capital fund for the purchase of 2 Ultramobile Evolus Raider speed signs, plural, from Elon City is the name of the manufacturer.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
And any discussion?
Plus tax.
Yeah.
And that's not all.
No tax. We don't even have to go to Delaware.
Right.
Right?
That's not all you can also get.
I know. It is, I know.
James
No,
getting a Benchmark.
It's not by Bronco, is it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Well, it'll cut anything. Seriously, are there any discussion?
Bluetooth and smartphone compatible as well.
I think it would be a great thing because I think the one that is right near between my house and my neighbor's house has made a big difference. It's solar.
It is.
Yes, it is solar.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the one on Yale has also made a difference. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. All right, approved. Thanks, Mary. Ross, Public Works?
Okay, we did meet this past month. We will meet this month on October 24th, the usual time, 8:30 in the morning. At our committee meeting, Colleen Murphy, who's the Executive Director of SRA, and Bill Lawson, who's the President of SRA, came to present their SRA 2020 budget request, which was for $25,000, which the committee agreed we want to recommend yes. And I'll just note that that's the same as SRA asked for last year. It's the same that they've asked all the way, according to my records, at least back to 2016. So they've been doing a fantastic job for the same amount of money over many years. And this is SRA's 80th year. They're a hallmark and great organization for this town. So I want to note that, and I'm sure you all join me in just appreciating SRA's contribution to this town. It's so important. Colleen and Bill, they gave an excellent report on many of the programs, and they said that more than 3,000 individuals registered for SRA programs this past year. So they're doing a lot for the money that is provided to them. They also employ Swarthmore youth in camp programs, and Colleen pointed out this gives them experience, a first job. And this year they added a high school junior to their board as a full voting board member to provide a youth perspective. And they want to also add a senior in high school to their board. They haven't done it yet, but they want to do that. So the committee thanked Colleen and Bill and everybody at SRA for the programs and their service. Then we talked about a whole bunch of things. Trash and recycle, which the manager already addressed, so I'm not going to go into that. We talked about the Central Park walls, and I guess, Jane, we didn't get any bids on that. So we thought at the committee meeting that we were going to get bids on that, but we didn't get any bids. So can we talk about that in committee again, or I guess we can talk about that.
Well, well, we know what, I think we know what the problem is. I'm going to call, because we actually sent the bid package out, and we're going to call and see why they didn't get it. I think we've got an issue with what we believe are statutory bonding requirements that are probably going to cost more than they're going to make on the job. So that's a problem. I don't have to talk to the solicitor about that. And I can widen the net. We can go to an online bidding process. We might get more people. I don't really need more authorization for that because you guys already authorized it once. So I was just going to keep working on it.
Okay.
If you bid it, if you advertise a second time and you don't get any bids, then you're free to contract with whomever you like.
Oh, wow.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So, Jane, I assume in your part tonight, you're going to talk about the stormwater permit, or?
I wasn't going to, no.
You just mentioned that we,
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you.
yes, so that's a good thing, because that has to get reviewed. And that allows us to send our stormwater down the pipes to the streams. And you may also talk about the insurance risk manager, but I don't know about that. We talked about the Thatcher Park equipment. The public works foreman looked for bids for sewer. Next year, the sewer bids are higher for next year, so
The cleaning of the system.
cleaning
that's right, yes.
is more expensive next year. And then we had a brief discussion of the big news in the newspaper about Aqua making a bid to acquire Delcora. We didn't really have much to say about it because nobody knows that much about it. I did follow up and talk with Susan Smythe, who is our borough representative to CDCA, which is the authority that we send our sewage to, who then sends it on to Delcora, who then sends it on to the Philadelphia and Chester treatment facilities. And Susan was very helpful, and she passed some questions along to CDCA, and they provided us a little bit more information back. But we're just not going to know what's happening until the PUC reviews the whole thing. We had some kind of vague discussion about perhaps at some point, maybe, we don't really know enough yet. Council might want to write a letter to the PUC, but we don't really know enough yet to even frame what we would write. We observed in the committee meeting that it's kind of interesting because in the past, when private companies have bought on occasion these municipal sewer systems, some that we have seen that have been in the news, they would basically buy it from the municipality and write a check to the municipality. The municipality gets the check, and then they get to do with that check what they want. Aqua's not proposing to buy CDCA, the systems that we use, or our town system. So nobody would be writing a check to us because they're not buying our system or the system we feed into. But they do talk about having this trust fund to reduce increases in fees in the future, and they're saying that that would benefit all ratepayers, including us. So that's just kind of an interesting aspect to it. But nobody really knows how they would pay out because nobody's seen the terms of the trust they say that they're going to do. It would completely depend on the terms of the trust. So presumably that will come out when Aqua makes its filing with the PUC, and we'll try and follow that. We'll talk about it in committee. There might be a point in time when we want to file an open records request with somebody at some point to get a little information or not. We're not at that point yet. So that's about it. Susan did send me another article that was in the Enquirer about this that provided a little more information. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Well, so my understanding of it is that during the PUC review process, which is for 6 months?
The Enquirer said it could be a year. CDCA said it could take a year. Some people said, I heard 6 months. I think it's very unclear.
But there is an open comment period, so anyone in the public who is interested in commenting on this, if they're
Yes.
willing to get involved, this would be the time to do that, correct?
Yes, or write a letter. I'm assuming it'd be the same as when we went to SEPTA on the tunnel over here, and the college wrote a letter. I went in and testified. Those things.
Yeah, the PUC comment period is open to the public.
Yes.
So, anyone who wants to can submit comments.
Yes.
In person even.
Yes.
They have sessions when you can do that.
Yes. So that was pretty much it, I think, for our Public Works Committee, and don't really have anything else. So we'll meet on October 24th.
Thank you, Ross.
Sure.
Before we get further into the agenda, is there any other business any member of council would like to raise? If not,
I have
there
a
is.
little bitty shout out.
Yes.
It's timely because we're purchasing, in the process of applying for grants and purchasing electric charging stations, but I wanted to give credit to Swarthmore in the Enquirer of the 10 suburban Philadelphia area, Pennsylvania municipalities or cities with the highest rates of plug-in vehicles. Swarthmore comes in number 4.
Wow,
So I thought that was pretty exciting.
that's exciting.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
yeah, so I wanted to give a little shout out to Swarthmore and also Jane once again for her impeccable timing.
Marty?
Yes. Again, I just wanted to commend council and certainly Ray and the Civil Service Commission on the expeditious handling of the hiring. Really, I don't think it could have gone any smoother. Hopefully, barring any unforeseen circumstances, we should be swearing George in before too long. It would be great to have the force back up to what it was before Ray took on his new position. The NRAD training is scheduled for Wednesday, the 16th. It'll be given to all the officers, and at that point, we'll be able to go out on the road and start using the NRAD. And along with the signs, I think, residents certainly can't say that council has been ignoring the calls for issues regarding speeding. And I think it will do. I think we're going to see hopefully see some really positive changes in terms of the public perceptions about how the police and how council are responding to their concerns. We had an incredible weekend. I mean, and I think really it speaks to an amazing community. I mean, this weekend we had Garnet Weekend, the Farmers Market, the Presbyterian Church Fall Fair, SRA Oktoberfest, the Swarthmore Horticultural Society party right out here. Not to mention the Princeton Avenue block party. With no incidents at all. I mean, it was really an incredible weekend. This all happened on Saturday, I think. So it was really a pretty amazing weekend here in town. And I think it makes a really strong impression on people that are coming into Swarthmore. When we have people from the alumni coming in from Garden Weekend, seeing what's going on in this town. I think it's a sea change in what they remember Swarthmore being when they were actually studying at the college. So I mean, it really is. A lot has happened here, and I think a lot will continue to happen in the future. I'm really optimistic about what's going to be going on the next several years. And Rick, thank you for what the fire department's doing on the fire prevention week, and I think it's really bringing public attention to what we need to do and see if there's anything else. Ray and I also spoke about the. We're going to start sending out, I've asked him if he would start sending out monthly, the monthly activity reports just once a month to show you what the numbers are in terms of the type of activities the police are involved with. He sends me daily reports. There's no need to bog up your email with daily reports, but at least monthly. They're not very specific. You've seen them before. They're really general in character in terms of the nature of the incidents, and it's really numeric. But it'll give you an opportunity to ask questions and see if there's anything that pops out at you that you'd like to bring to us at monthly meetings. So you can expect to get that by email before the next meeting, and then we'll continue to do that each month. So thanks, Ray, for suggesting that. Other than that, I think that is it.
The emergency management plan, what we came up with, who's going to do what next, because I forgot to mention.
Yeah, we did meet public safety. We had, let's see, was it Ray Devine and Tom Oleski were there from the fire department working on the fire. They're in charge of kind of the overall public emergency management situation here. They're going to be working on developing, reviewing the plan, reviewing what needs to be done for updates. As it was pointed out, almost nobody that's named in that plan for having any responsibility in case of public emergency is either still in office, or some of them are not even alive anymore.
Except for me and Rick, who never go anywhere.
Yeah, I think that it's a rather slim group. So we're going to be really doing an update on the emergency response plans for what hopefully will never happen here in Swarthmore, at least, and we'll keep you informed as to how that's going on. But right now, we've left it in the hands of Tom and Ray to kind of take a look and review and bring to our attention what needs to be done, and then we'll start working on it. Anything else? Any
Thank you,
other
Martin.
questions? Thank you.
Care to address council at this time, please come forward. Seeing none. Jane?
On the agenda, only change from previous years is it's for removal also of trees in borough parks. We've sort of been a little more diligent than we have been in the past, and Bartlett may or may not be doing an assessment of the trees, so this will just lock in some prices with a contractor. This is another contract that we do send far and wide. We let contractors know that it's out there. I think for a lot of tree people, they just don't like being beholden to having to get it done in 30 days. But we have found when people have paid $3,000 to have a tree removed, they don't really want to wait. So we will try and get competitive bids. With that said, my brothers have sent the contract, and I think they have to raise the prices in 3 or 4 years. So that will be on just to authorize for bids next time. The electric vehicle charging station, I'm happy to report that we got a voucher for an electric vehicle charging station from the state. I think you heard me mention before when I got approval to apply. This is from the Volkswagen We Were Bad diesel buyers. Really they were. Every state got money and Pennsylvania has really poured the money into a program that they call the Driving PA Forward. And this is one of the, in her training area. This is one of the programs. So we have 180 days to spend the money. The rebate is up to $10,000. And I did send out the quote for one of the products. It's a charge point. It's under a state contract. It's been being installed by around 5 municipalities. The net cost of the borough should be zero. If you add up those costs, the last $2,500 on there was actually for the cost of running the electric wire from Borough Hall to wherever the station is, and we're about 3/4 of the way there already because we planned for it when we were doing the Central Park. So that won't cost nearly that much. So really, it's going to cost the borough nothing to go ahead and apply. However, I did want, in full disclosure, one of the requirements, and I may have said this before, I apologize if I did, we have to dedicate 2 spaces. They cannot, be in the parking lot, and they will be only for electric vehicles. We can charge for parking, and we can charge for the electricity, but we can't let anybody else park there. So that is one of the caveats of that grant. Of course, the state loves the location, Charge Point loves the location, it's so visible, these are exactly the type of places they're looking for. I think Bill Foster, who just left, is going to try and get the school district to also apply for it for the same grant. So I don't know, do you want me to get approval to?
The parking spaces?
Well, no, not for that, for the purchase order.
No,
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Yeah, it's kind of what we said we were going to do, so I think.
Yeah, since it comes in some funding
Right,
source, it's
right.
not.
So unless there's any objections, we're going to talk to our electrician today and we'll move forward on that. And as I said, it is the Charge Point network. There's a lot of them out there. Hopefully we didn't make an enormous mistake. We've got to pick one at some point. And as I say, the nice thing about this one, it is already in the state contract, so we're going to.
Jane, I have just one question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
if we have to dedicate the 2 spaces, how do you do that with the farmer's market?
You mean on the Saturday morning? Well, there's no parking available on Saturday morning, so
So
I
if
think
there's
that would
no
be
parking,
okay.
then you're okay.
I think so.
I have another
They also
question.
say they don't micromanage. We're not going to come and see that you don't monitor it.
Can an electric car park there that is not being charged?
They do not regulate that. What the rules say is,
Why would anybody do that?
project just has to be designated.
Yeah, it's a
No.
spot.
Yeah, but if you're parking there, you charge, trust me, having a chargeable car, anytime we can charge it, we charge
We
it.
charge, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I'm hearing from people.
Yeah.
Projects must include at least one designated, we're doing 2, and clearly marked EV parking space that says EV charging only. So I don't know how to answer that question.
Yeah.
And Jane, if there's 2 spaces, does that presume that
2 cars can be charging at the
Yes.
same time?
Yes, it's a double, that price includes a double, which they highly recommend as more, and now we know that we do it.
And warranty, it's warranted.
Right, we actually are buying a year of warranty, that's included, but we're buying 3 years worth of service
Good.
for the cloud-based, for the charging, because we'll get, people will charge, and then we'll get some money back for the electricity that's used. And the state requires a 3-year guarantee, so that's already covered.
It just does seem like these things break down a lot.
I totally agree. Every place I go, well, we've had issues with this and issues with that. So I think we'll definitely continue the warranty. And one of the things I actually liked is you can buy directly from ChargePoint, but the price is the same. And this National E-Solutions, they will, they'll do the interface to make sure that it's working. Their reputation is online, and they're trying to make sure that they are well aligned with municipalities. So I thought that was another, well, not just calling ChargePoint when there's a problem. We actually have like a sales rep in our corner, so hopefully they'll.
Will we get any
Media's
data?
apparently, okay, what?
Data, like how much it's used or?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, probably the same way we get data for the, passport.
Yeah, stealth mode. Does it have stealth mode?
That's why I bought it, because I like this stuff.
What
That's
about,
what I recommend.
and I guess the solar panel thing, there was no
I
option
don't
for
follow up
that?
on that. I mean.
I know some of them definitely, even ChargePoint ones do have solar panels to provide some of the.
So you can use the solar, can you charge for the solar? Can the
What?
municipality charge for the solar?
Yeah, I think you charge no matter where
Where
the
it's coming
electricity
from?
comes from. So
All right,
if it's
I'll
being
ask
powered
them.
by solar,
Right, we're making out like $2.
then it's just
a dollar.
payback, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
How long does it take typically for a car to charge?
It totally depends on the car, and I assume this will have high capacity, like two
It's
level
not the
charging.
super, yeah, it's not the super charge, it's the level 2 charge.
Level 2 charge.
Yeah.
Yeah, so most vehicles on level 2 charge, it's anywhere from like 2.5 to 8 hours.
Well, how does that fit with the parking meter? How does that fit?
Well, I think the spaces can still turn over the same amount of time.
So you can put your money in the meter for 2 hours and charge, and then you're supposed to be out when your meter expires.
I mean, if we want to get, penny wise on this, we could make those meters 24-hour meters.
I think we should see how it works with all the data, and then we might have to make a change.
I've actually had some residents ask about this recently, and I do think there are people who would love to come park their cars here at 6 o'clock at night and leave them parked in until 6 o'clock in the morning to get a full charge. So, we might have to revisit at some point if we want to put time limits or just maybe wait and see how it is being used. Because I think also a lot of people, they're coming to town for something, they take the opportunity. Seriously, if you can plug in for 10 minutes, that's a couple miles. So, and then there are going to be other people who use it as a primary charging source
Instead of their house.
instead of their house.
Well, if you don't have
But
a
they're
level
paying
2,
for
it's
it.
out, it's like,
Yeah.
2 days or something? to charge?
No. Even, we trickle charge ours. We don't even have, we just plug it into the wall and
Yeah.
it charges overnight, so. Yeah, but, a lot of people want to charge faster than
Sure.
that, so.
These are faster than what you would have.
Yeah, it's faster than a wall plug, yeah. But very
So,
exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
You
It
can't
only
tell.
took 2 years. Long enough for the conduit to break off, but,
And people do pay for it. They pay a fee,
yeah.
and ChargePoint gets some of that, I would assume, and we will get some of that.
Sure.
So
Right.
even if they do park for 12 hours, we're making money off of it. so.
Do you know how much?
Not much.
Not much. So
$100 a
I
year or
think,
something.
I actually had a conversation with the
Sound like
folks
that's working.
from White Marsh Township has 3 stations, so that's 6 spots. And they've been in park, their township building, and their public works lot for 3 months. And they got their first check, and it was $64. So again, the idea is, your taxpayers don't want you giving electricity away,
Sure.
get it, but you're not making money.
They're also not on my list, so they don't have nearly as many
White Marsh
electric vehicles as.
Somebody's driving to White Marsh and.
I predict that there will be a car in those spots
That's great.
pretty much 24/7.
So, and I think a point was brought up, it doesn't have to be necessarily the spots that were originally we thought would be
Right.
chargeable spots, right? I mean, it could be somewhere else in the lot.
It's gonna be there because it's really close to the panel.
It's gotta be near where the electricity is.
Yeah.
Right.
We actually
So
looked
we
at
could-
a whole bunch of spots, and there doesn't seem to be a spot that's better than those two spots.
So it would have to be those spots.
Yeah. We could give us thought of them.
No, I was just thinking, like, if it was gonna be overnight parking or other things, that maybe we wouldn't want it to be right there, but if that's the only
I
option.
mentioned it too, and we can look at some other
Do
spots.
we allow overnight parking in that lot?
We don't, although it's not by ordinance. I've never seen an
I
ordinance.
think it goes into the 2 to 6 a.m.,
Yeah.
I believe. But we do allow people have overnight guests and they call us and we grant them unless there's something, pending, like the farmer's market on Saturday, we say no, but we get movers coming in and stuff like that.
So we might have to tweak
Not
some.
unusual.
Yeah, and as I said, I actually don't think the lot is covered by an ordinance
Maybe not.
prohibiting parking, so. And I don't think we do tickets there if people park there overnight?
Yes.
Oh, sorry about that.
Maybe we need to.
So, Ross already gave our report on the walls on Central Park. We will work on that. I did get a request for traffic calming from the residents of Arlington Avenue, who asked the traffic calming committee to meet and consider putting in,
Switch.
tables. So what we normally do is before the traffic calming committee meets, we'll ask the police department to get some speed data so they have something to look at. So we'll move ahead on that. The Borough Council next month will have a subdivision request for a subdivision for the property of Riverview. I think I think Beth mentioned that before. That's been advertised and Planning Commission has that this month. I wanted to thank Tim Carney. He had a meeting, actually, that Rick went to, our fire chief went to, talking about issues with statewide fire response and the problem with volunteer. And I don't think they had an idea that actually we haven't kicked around, which was pretty impressive, the panelists who spoke to the senators. And they really said, tell us like what we can do like now to solve the problem. And one of the very discreet things that I think we probably should write a follow-up letter is this foreign casualty insurance, foreign fire tax that the fire companies get that they cannot spend on any of their paid personnel, in spite of the fact that there's paid personnel in almost every fire department now that's not a completely rural department. So they were telling the senators, who included some people from Philadelphia, was really the group that Tim, I guess it was the Democratic caucus team, very distinct things that could be done. And our own fire company has money that they have trouble spending because their volunteers are low. And yet you can't buy equipment for a volunteer who's not there, and yet you're spending money out of pocket for the people who are paying. So they were very interested to hear that. And again, we've kicked that idea around. They're like, just tell us what you want and we'll try and make that work. That was very interesting. And then, of course, the idea that the county could possibly somehow get funding to at least think about taking over fire service. Chester County has just completed a really, what sounded like a really interesting study on how the county could move forward, and maybe Delaware County could take a look at that when they're going to fight. It was really heartening to hear how interested they were in the issue, and it wasn't like, let's give a tax credit to a volunteer or give them free classes at community college. It was really recognizing that there's a dire problem, and the legislature or whatever they're going to have to take a very active role in fixing it. So thanks to Tim for doing that, and the woman who's the chair of the caucus, the Veterans Affairs Committee, I can't remember her name. And lastly, I would like an executive session to discuss 2 code enforcement issues that are in the legal arena.
All right, thank you.
Sorry. Oh, I noticed that our next meeting is Tuesday, October 15th.
Yes.
Hey, can I go back for a second?
Go ahead, sure.
Just thinking about this parking and ordinances, if those 2 spots are going to be limited to electric cars, do we need to pass an ordinance so that
No.
the police will be able to ticket if people park there? No?
We can do it by resolution if we need to do something.
Oh, right, because the.
We can do it by
amended to
resolution.
allow it to be by resolution.
If we need to do something, we do it by resolution.
Okay, all right.
And I think to start, as I said, the people from the state were very clear. We want this mark, we want this to happen. but it may be a slow process, and we don't, so I think, maybe the chief and I make up a note, hey, this is reserved for electric vehicles, next time please don't park here, as opposed to having another line of people at his office complaining. I think we can do that, and kind of bring police awareness about why the borough's doing it. So we have an opportunity more for education, not necessarily changing the law. That would be my suggestion. I don't know why I put other business on here. Sorry.
Bob?
Thanks, I don't have anything.
Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn into executive session.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, ayes have it. We're adjourned.